Hey everyone, Dave at Tombstone Tech, and yeah, I know it's been a while, but sometimes life intervenes, gets in the way of me making my videos. However, I am very happy to say that I don't seem to have lost many subscribers, despite the fact that I haven't been putting very many videos out lately, and I am very grateful to all of you who have stuck with me, and I appreciate it. If you would like to see me do more of these videos, you can help by subscribing and liking and sharing the videos, because one thing I really need right now is more watch hours. But the more people that I get and the more watch hours I get, the more I'll be able to do more of these videos. So please help. It doesn't cost anything. Okay, now that we have that out of the way, I want to talk about styrofoam and the cutting thereof. Now, styrofoam is a very workable material. You can cut it with knives and saws, or you can cut it with a hot wire cutter like this one that I made many years ago. I don't even know how long I've had this, at least 20 years. I'm at that age now where I have some things that I have no idea how long I've had them, or in some cases even where I got them. But this will plug into a power supply with this wire, and then between these two things, you can probably see it better on the close-up camera, but there's a thin wire, and that is rather a special kind of wire, which I will describe in a little bit. But basically, you know, how a foam cutter like this works is you run a current through this wire, which makes it get hot, and then it'll go through foam and melt it. So I need to make a new one of these because I want to do some work with these styrofoam blocks, which you may recognize. These things come from like outdoor supply stores, especially ones that sell utility trailers, because they use these big styrofoam blocks to support the trailers while they're in transit, so they don't bump into each other and get scratched and all that. And as you can see, this thing is not quite wide enough to cut through one of these things. I'd like to be able to at least slice one of these in half, so I want to make a slightly bigger version of this that will cut one of these in half. Yeah, there you can see to good effect that not quite there. It's not quite deep enough in the throat. This part is called the throat, and it's not wide enough to get on either side of the blocks. I guess it's just deep enough to cut one of these in half, but it's not wide enough. Now, before we do that, let's talk a little bit about styrofoam. Now, styrofoam is actually a registered trademark. It's one of those trademark names that has become a noun, much like you have for, say, adhesive bandage strips or petroleum jelly. No one says those things. They always say, I need a Band-Aid, or I need Vaseline to put on this. You know, everyone just refers to this, this foam as styrofoam, but what is it really? Well, there's two types of styrofoam out there. Now, I have this is a small piece. This is the same material that the big block is made out of. Now, when you say styrofoam, usually this is what people are thinking of. And if you look at it in close-up, especially if you look along the edge here, you might be able to see, if I break a little piece off, you'll surely be able to see it. But if you look at that right there, yeah, you can see that these pieces of styrofoam are actually made up of a bunch of little tiny spheres, and that's why when you break it off, you get that bubbly appearance, as you can see here. What this is expanded polystyrene. Now, styrene is a plastic. The poly part of it, I guess, means there's something mixed in with the styrene besides styrene. But the way this stuff is produced is they will have a bunch of these little styrene spheres, little balls of styrene that go into a mold, and then that mold is heated with steam, I believe, and the styrene spheres, they expand and they get sticky, and that's how you get this. Now, the other really common type of foam is this stuff. Now, this stuff is used a lot in insulation. This goes into your walls, or you know, I suppose you could, I've never seen a cooler made of this, but this stuff, if you look at it, especially if you look at it close up, you can see it doesn't have all the little spheres. I mean, if you look really closely, you can kind of see particles, but this is extruded polystyrene, whereas this is expanded polystyrene. Once again, this stuff goes into a mold as little spheres, and it's steam heated, and it swells up and sticks together, and then it comes out of the mold and it looks like this. This is extruded polystyrene. In this case, the spheres go into a mold and then they're squeezed out of that mold, kind of like a Play-Doh fun factory. It's, you know, the spheres are heated into a glob and then it's pushed through something. It's extruded. Now, the differences between these two is that the extruded polystyrene is rather dense, and it's also quite a bit more structurally sound than the expanded polystyrene. A lot of people will use this for making props, especially like gravestones for a cemetery, because this stuff will carve really well if you're using, say, a Dremel or a router or something. This stuff will carve almost like wood. I like working with the expanded polystyrene because it's a little more readily available, and I have, like if I'm using it for tombstones, I have a particular way that I will show you in a different video of doing the inscriptions that works a lot better with the expanded than it does with the extruded. But before you can make anything out of it, you have to be able to cut it. Okay, so what do we need to build a foam wire cutter? The first thing you're going to need is the cutting wire. And the cutting wire needs to be a special kind of wire called nichrome, or nickel chromium wire. It's wire that is made from an alloy of nickel and chromium, and it has some interesting properties. One is that it has a high electrical resistance. When you run a current through it, it doesn't want to let that current go through, which, as I've talked about in other videos, when you have resistance to current, you get heat. And this wire will resist that current and it will get quite warm, but it also has a high melting point, so it can get nice and hot, and you can use it for cutting through foam without it getting so hot that it melts. It's not to say that you can't heat it up to the point where it melts, but we'll talk about that later. So you will need nichrome wire. This is what's actually going to do the cutting. You will need a power supply. Now, I'm going to use this one. This is a 6-volt power supply that's rated for 2 amps or 2000 milliamps. Couple of important things about the power supply that you use. Make sure it is a DC, direct current power supply. Don't try to make this with AC. And the one I'm using, like I said, is 6 volts, which is a pretty safe voltage to work with, I think. 2 amps. You want something that's rated for probably at least 1 amp for the wire to be able to get hot enough, but also so that it doesn't burn out your power supply. If you use something that's like, 200 milliamps, I don't know if it'll get hot enough, but I'm pretty sure that the power supply will burn out a lot quicker. So this is a 2 amp power supply. That should be plenty. You'll need that. You'll need a length of 2 conductor wire. Now I think this is about 16 gauge speaker wire. It has 2 conductors. Any 2 conductor cable will do. Doesn't have to be speaker wire, but I like using speaker wire because it's readily available. And like I said, this is 15 gauge. It's nice and thick, so it's not going to get that hot. It might warm up a little bit, but it's not going to get really hot. You're going to want a switch of some kind, hopefully something that can be mounted right into the PVC pipe that you're going to build this out of. It's just important because you don't want to leave the foam cutter powered for too long, because eventually it will burn out the power supply or the wire will get hot and melt, which is also a fire hazard. So the idea with the button is to turn it on, the wire will heat up really quick, do your cut or a couple of cuts, and then turn it off and let it cool down again. And you'll need some PVC pipe and some PVC pipe fittings. Now I'm using 1/2-inch PVC pipe like this, available at any big box hardware store. And as you can see, I have several fittings here. I have 2 corners. I'll turn around so you can see it that way. 2 corner pieces, 2 T pieces, and 2 end caps. Now you can see them. The reason I do it like this is that, as you can see on this one, you could just make this U shape, but I find that having this extra support piece in here makes it a little more comfortable to hold when you're cutting stuff, but also it gives a lot more strength to this. It makes this a lot more sturdy. It won't tend to bend as much if you have that support piece. You will also need some machine screws and nuts. I'm using these. These are 3/4 of an inch long. And I got these just because this is a convenient size for what I'm doing. I do have some machine screws, but they were like 2 or 3 inches long, and I just wanted something shorter. You'll need a soldering iron and some solder and the ability to use both. You'll need some PVC glue to assemble and fix the joints on your wire cutter. You'll need something to cut the PVC pipe. Now you can use a jigsaw or a hacksaw, but when you cut through PVC pipe like that, you make a lot of dust and a lot of mess. I like this thing because it just slices through the PVC pipe with no mess, just cuts it nice and clean like you're cutting butter. Highly recommend one of those. You're going to need a drill, which is behind me here, and drill bits, of course, and then you'll need a couple other rudimentary tools, a screwdriver, needle nose, wire cutter, wire stripper. Whenever you're stripping wires, I love these automatic wire strippers. These are just the best. So I think that's everything you need. Let's build a wire cutter. Okay, as I said, I want to make this thing so that I can cut through these big foam blocks. So I'm going to take a big foam block here, and I'm just going to roughly say that that's about how wide I want my my cutter to be. This is something, if you want to get really technical, you can measure and cut according to that, but I think eyeballing it will work just fine. So there's one piece, and let's see, I have another short piece here. I want to cut these to be about the same length, so squeeze it down. So there you have the first 2 pieces. Now these 2 pieces are going to be the handle. They're going to be these 2 pieces like that. So there's our handle. Now I'm just going to put all this together dry. That's going to go there. And so I'm going to need a couple of short pieces to go to make the handle. So I'm going to take this piece, All right. So now we have that, and we can just temporarily put this together so you can see what I'm talking about. Put those T pieces on there like that. Then put it together like so. Now I'm not putting it together, I'm not shoving it in there real hard because that'll make it harder to take apart to glue. But see, there's the back handle. That handle will be a little narrower by the time I really put this together and glue it. And now we just need the pieces that will hold the wire. There we go, and I think with that, we now have all of our basic parts. So these will go like that, and then the caps will go on the end, and imagine, if you would, a piece of nichrome wire suspended between these two. And as you can see now, if I wanted to cut this block, I can get all the way almost to the other side of it, but I only really need to get to half, and that will fit very nicely like that. Okay, so that's the PVC portion. Now we're going to need to drill a couple of holes in this. By the way, as you're making this, it's a good idea to put it on a tabletop and kind of get it flat so that it's not, you know, it's not twisted like that. Put it on a table, put it flat. Make sure you do that before you glue it together, and it'll be nice and straight. Now we're gonna have to make a couple of holes in the PVC to accommodate wires and the like. You're gonna need to make 4 holes. You're gonna need to make a couple of holes in the end caps for where the nichrome wire will go. You'll need to make one hole in one corner for the wiring to come out of so that you can plug it into the wall. And you're going to need to mount that switch someplace. So first thing is, we're going to take these end caps off, and we're going to make holes in these that will accommodate these machine screws. Can never get these things open. Struggle. There we go. Okay. These machine screws are 3/4 of an inch, which I think that's a pretty good size for doing this. So I will follow my first instinct and try to make it drill into it on a little bit of an angle. Sometimes when you're drilling something that you want to have on an angle, start it at a right angle like that, and then as soon as the bit starts to bite into it, then tilt it up to get your angle. All right, so there's the first hole drilled. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and stick this in there into the end cap so that it sticks out through that little hole. This might be easier said than done. There we go. There you go. So there you can see that I have the threaded end sticking through at a little bit of an angle. So that is good. And do the same thing over here. See that on the close-up camera, I think. All right, and now we're going to put a nut on there just to hold these things onto the end cap. There we go. All right. I just remembered I don't want to tighten these down too much yet because I have to do a little electrical work on this yet. So I'm going to loosen that nut, but I've got the nuts on there just so that it'll stay in for now. Now we're going to take this piece off. I'm going to take this corner piece, and I need pliers. All right, now this corner piece is where the electrical wiring will enter this. So I'm going to start with the same drill bit. Ouch. Wow, that hurt. Got to be careful. Now that we have a pilot hole, we will get a larger bit and make the hole big enough. All right. Ah, see? Now that goes right in there in the corner like that. That's what you want. So there's our hole for our electrical connection. Now we need a hole for the button. Okay, so if I'm going to do a slide switch like this, I might want to consider a different method for making this hole. Okay, so what I've done is I've gouged out a hole just big enough that I'll be able to mount this switch in there when the time comes, just like that. All right. Okay, make sure it's nice and flat. Okay. So the cable is going to enter here, and the two wires, one's going to go this way and one is going to come all the way over this way. And the wire that comes all the way over this way is going to be connected to the switch to break the circuit. So what I am going to do is this. I'm going to take this off, and I'm going to split this wire down almost to the end. And I'm going to shove that in there and let that go so that it comes out over here. And I'm going to shove the other wire in so that it comes out over there. And I'm just going to go ahead and pull this all the way through. Now hopefully I have chosen a piece of wire that is long enough. All right, there we go. You just got to have enough sticking out of the end that you can connect it. And there we have one coming to each branch of this thing. And now these two wires will go through here, I think. There we go. There we go, and it reaches the end and everything. I'm going to stick that through there and through here. All right. So there's that part. Now we have that 2-conductor wire enters through this corner right down here. One wire comes all the way over this way, and one wire comes all the way over that way. And we have a place for our switch to go as well. All right, now we're going to get to some soldering. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to take this end cap. Okay. I'm going to take that screw out of there. And I'm going to get out my handy soldering helper. And I am going to solder this wire. I'm going to solder this wire onto the end of this screw, just like that. There we go. So now you can see that that wire is now attached to the screw. Ta-da! All right, and now we can take this, hopefully it's on there well, and I'm gonna put a little kink in it here just so I can get it into the end cap. Hey, there we go. All right, and then we'll put this nut on there, being careful because the screw is still kind of hot. Okay, so now that first wire is soldered onto the screw, and the screw is now bolted into the end cap. So now we can actually glue this part if we wanted to, but I don't think I'm going to glue it just yet. Now we're going to do the similar thing on this side, so I'm going to cut this wire here. There we go. All right, so they're not exactly at matching angles, but you know, as long as you have a straight line across here, you're gonna be fine. So there's that much of it. And now the other part, which might be slightly trickier, is that I'm going to reach into this big hole that I gouged for mounting the switch. I'm gonna grab that piece of wire that's in there, and so there's the wire. Oh, this is handy. All right, so I'm going to cut that. So now we have our switch wired in there. I'll put that on the close-up camera. See that that is wired in line with that switch. And we should be able to just kind of shove this back down in there, and later on we'll make that switch permanent with a little hot melt glue. So that is most of the wiring. Now we can actually glue this thing up. So again, we'll lay it flat on the bench here and make sure everything is lined up how I want it. So first thing I'm going to do is to glue these end caps on. Now, please remember when you're working with PVC glue, this stuff is, number one, can be very messy, but number two, the stuff is also very fumy. So make sure you use it in a well-ventilated area. So just get that open. So now this is all glued up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a hot glue gun just to secure the switch. I'm going to put a glob of glue on here just so that that doesn't move, although I don't think it will. While the glue gun is heating up, I'm going to take my nichrome wire and I'm going to straighten out a section of it and just kind of measure roughly how much I will need and cut it. Pull that insulation off of there. Yeep, there it goes. All right, so there is my nichrome wire, and what I'm going to do with it, if you haven't already guessed, is I'm going to wrap one end onto here. And there we go. So I just have that on there once around, and using the needle nose to make sure it's nice and cleanly wrapped around. And now I'm going to take a nut and tighten it down onto there. I'm going to bring the wire over. Now you don't need to have the wire taut, but you probably want to have it straight. So just straighten it out the best you can. And where's the other nut? Here we go. All right, and then I'm just gonna wrap that around there. Okay, so again, there's not a whole lot of tension on this wire. There's just enough to hold it straight so that when you're cutting something, you get a relatively straight cut. There you go, something like that. There it is. All right, how's the hot glue gun doing? It's doing very well. So now, I'm going to just lift this out a little bit, put some hot glue around this hole. And under the ends there. There we go. And I'll just shove that in there. Push it down with my pliers so that it'll stay. All right. So that is pretty much it. One thing left to do, and that is power it up. So I happen to have this power supply. Looks like I connected a coaxial connector onto it for some reason, I don't know what. It's probably not a bad idea. I'm gonna cut this off and get a clean pair of wires. Probably not a bad idea to make this connection with wire nuts, because if you do happen to burn out your power supply, it's a lot easier to splice in a replacement. I mean, you know, if you want to solder this on and put heat shrink tubing over it and make it look all nice and pretty, that's fine, but it's a lot easier to do it this way, just in case you burn out the power supply and you need to switch power supplies out. All right, I'm not exactly sure on this which way is on and which way is off. So let's plug it in, see what it does. All right, plugged in. Not getting hot, so I'm assuming that this isn't on. So I'm going to turn it on. There it goes. And now I'm going to turn it off. And you know what? I'm actually going to take a Sharpie and I'm going to make a on-off symbol on there, if you can see that, so that I know which way is on and which way is off. And there you go. So you see, it takes a second for the wire to heat up enough, but I'm going to turn it on. And you'll see, it'll go, just let it get a little warm, and then it goes through there. Now, one thing about cutting styrofoam with a hot wire cutter, if you notice how I was sliding it up and down there, I'll do it again, watch. So I put it in there, so now the wire's nice and hot, but you notice I slide it up and down a little bit. The reason I do that is that as the wire is cutting, it's melting the styrofoam, and as it melts, it evaporates, and as it evaporates, it cools the wire. So when you start to cut, it'll cut and then it'll be like, it'll slow down because the wire is cooling down. So if by moving the piece up and down, you can move it to an area where the wire is still hot, and that way it'll cut smoothly. Now, I don't want to cut this big foam block yet, but that is the hot wire cutter. And I mean, you know, I think you can make this for under 10 bucks. Now, one thing that is that you can do with a wire cutter like this is, if you can clamp it between two table surfaces, you can put your foam on there, and like if the foam were on a raised platform here, kind of like so, just pretend that this is a tabletop. If you have it in there, something like that, now it's like having it on, almost like on a table saw. Of course, you got to have the wire cutter secure. But see, you can put it on there, and then you can slide it along as I'm doing there, and you can trace out a shape. Now, the disadvantage to doing this is, of course, you can't do the up and down thing unless you do like that. Whoop. And there you have it, the hot wire cutter, complete with the built-in switch. As I said, the power supply I used is a 6-volt, 2-amp supply. The shorter the wire is, the shorter the nichrome is, the faster it'll heat up. So there's a little bit of dialing it in and getting used to working with it. But once you make it, you'll figure out how long it takes for the wire to heat up to cutting temperature based on the length of the wire and the power that you put into it. And that's it. And just like with the PVC glue, when you're cutting styrofoam, it does let off a gas. So do it someplace with some ventilation, or at least a fan or something, and you should be fine. So now I am all ready to cut these big foam blocks. I'm not gonna, well, I suppose I could do it. Let's cut this in half. Probably won't cut very straight, but we'll see. All right, letting the wire cutter heat up. I'm gonna stand up here so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to put it approximately in the middle here. And here we go. And there it goes. I can do a little back and forth. I don't have a whole lot of room here. But you can see it's going right through it there. And again, I'm not cutting it very straight. I just want to demonstrate that I can now cut one of these foam blocks in half. Sometimes all you gotta do to heat the wire back up from it getting cooled off through evaporation of the styrofoam is just kind of take the pressure off of it. And almost to the bottom. Now, I mean, when you're cutting a really thick piece like this, it's going to go a little slow. But there we go, and almost to the bottom. And to the bottom on one side, to the bottom on the other. Oop. And we'll just kind of do this. And look at that. Cleaved in two. Now you can see how these striations, because I was just kind of freehanding this. If you were to do this, oh, and let me turn this off while I'm standing here talking. If you were to set this up on a table, like I said, so that you have something to slide this on, you'll get a much smoother, straighter cut. But on the other hand, you might want something like this, because this wouldn't be a bad tombstone face. you know. It could look like, you know, weathered stone or something like that. But anyhow, that, friends and neighbors, is the foam wire cutter. If you make one of these, as with anything that you see on this channel, if you make something that I've shown you how to make, send me pictures of video of it in action. You know, just let me see what you're doing with your foam cutter or your can lights or your silk flame cauldrons, all that good stuff. I'd love to see it, and I'll feature it on the channel. Again, please like, share, and subscribe so I can get those viewer hours up and I'll be able to spend more time making these videos. But I hope you enjoyed that, and we will see you on the next one. So thanks.